The major story tonight is that Sasha Banks and Naomi, not even reportedly. I mean, this is, WWE went to the extent of issuing a statement confirming that they walked out of Raw at some point today. They had been scheduled for a 6-pack challenge that was going to headline the show that would also feature Asuka, Becky Lynch, Nikki Ash, and Doudrop. And it was Mike Johnson of PW Insider who was the first one that reported that the two had left earlier in the day, and just outlining some of the potential issues. On the broadcast itself, it was very interesting to watch how this story was sort of unfolding in real time. For me, like I got a message like around 8:45, and it was just sounds like some chaos tonight. And I was not up to date at Raw. I was still like 25, 30 minutes behind. So I'm listening to this and kind of like piecing it together. And then the segment occurs where they have announced a 6-pack challenge. They have not, to my knowledge, they did not advertise this during the day. This was the first I was hearing of this match. And then several segments later, Becky Lynch appears with Adam Pearce and states that she saw Naomi and Sasha Banks walk out of the arena. They're not here. We can't do the 6-pack challenge. And it's changed to Becky Lynch versus Asuka, a match that they have been teasing for several weeks and are going to do in the main event in the absence of the 6-pack challenge. And that is when kind of the pieces are coming together. And there's been some follow-up reporting from Fightful Select, who had noted that there had been a meeting earlier in the day involving Sasha Banks, and with Naomi, the two of them leave, and then WWE issues a statement. And this was more than I expected WWE. I did reach out to WWE as well. And I mean, I would say nearly 10 times out of 10 on a story like this, there's no way WWE is commenting on it. But they did put out a pretty lengthy statement. So I'm just going to read from that. When Sasha Banks and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of tonight's Monday Night Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into WWE Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand, placed their tag team championship belts on his desk, and walked out. They claimed they weren't respected enough as tag champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they'd had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. That paragraph is astounding that WWE put this out. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver, as advertised, tonight's main event. And on the show as well, there was also a line that you might have missed it, but later when they are teeing up the main event, Corey Graves, I want to get the exact wording here, said that earlier tonight, Sasha Banks and Naomi summarily and unprofessionally left the arena, which I mean is a Vince McMahon description if I have ever heard one. Summarily and unprofessionally left the arena. So I do not even need to guess here that there was extreme anger on the side of WWE. And the fact they went to that length in the press release to talk about specifics that had not been reported yet, that they had issues with two of the people in the match from a skill level, that they were not of a certain skill level that they were in, that they felt uncomfortable with in the ring, is just a level of explanation that WWE just does not openly provide. And that tells me it was coming from, like, it sounded like, listen, this is a live TV day. I am sure that tensions were very high when all of a sudden your main event is, your plans have to be rewritten. The pay-per-view is obviously changing around because now it's going to be Asuka challenging for the title. Sean Ross Sapp did report that Naomi was going to win the match. I've spoken to two people who conveyed the same to me. So it did look like they were going with Bianca Belair and Naomi for Hell in a Cell. And that is obviously not happening. And the larger question will be the futures of Sasha Banks and Naomi. Like, there is going to be, like, this is a pretty significant deal. And I would like to hear their sides as well to all of this. They obviously have not commented on it, but that is a huge part of this story is their side of it.
We got some tea, John, that we have to dissect and figure out exactly what happened here. This is
I joked about this to someone in the company tonight and literally made the comparison that if you guys just went all out, cameras on, you would blow Drive to Survive out of the water. Like this would be the most fascinating 1 hour docuseries if they have all the resources that they could do it. They have all the control of their talent. They could put cameras wherever they want, and they could have the most fascinating 10 episode season that comes out. And I mean, on a weekly basis, you would just get astounding stuff. And tonight being no exception.
It honestly, I don't know if we've had such a notable instance of talents reportedly leaving on a show day since Steve Austin, way back.
Punk.
Was that a show day?
That was the day of Raw. Yeah.
Okay, then I stand corrected. Then CM Punk. But I mean, nonetheless, that itself felt like it was 10 years ago. So
and that was Austin, their top star. And look at how they responded with that, with the confidential piece. I mean, they were livid. And I would imagine it's similar here. It's a developing story.
Yeah, it's wildly fascinating to think about what exactly might have gone on in the back, and I want to reserve judgment until we might possibly hear the other side, because we don't know what it was that. I mean, there are going to be people that'll argue that no matter what you're tasked to do on the show, you do it with a smile and you don't complain. I don't know what the extent of the complaint was. I don't know what led up to the complaint. I would love to hear the other side. I don't know if we'll ever get to hear the other side. But to me, what is the story is the reaction from the WWE and how public they decided to really, go at this, blowing it up into a bigger story than I think it could have been if they just swept it under the rug, confirming it to the press, confirming it to their audience, and releasing these statements to journalists, which
calling them unprofessional on the air. I mean, that was certainly a decision.
Have we seen them do this to any of the prior walkouts with this level of immediacy? And
not with the immediacy. Like if you go back and watch that Raw, the Austin one, Punk, they made no reference that night to Punk. With Austin, they came out and it was that Austin had walked out as I recall. And then it was the next week where they had the whole took his ball and went home. And on Confidential, they really went in on Austin hard, very hard, with Jim Ross involved in that whole thing. But that was not the immediacy of this one. Like this was just, and listen, I am talking about this as more so a larger issue that we always talk about with these talents, that they have so little say in the matter. They have so little power in the grand scheme of things. They do not have a ton of leverage. So when you do, when do you exercise that? It's, you can look at this and I don't think you can, from the outside looking in, get a clear perspective of what exactly went down tonight. But I always reserve judgment here for talent that are in a company where your leverage is very little. And you are often just expected to go with the flow, go with everything. And at what point do you put your foot down, even if it is going to cause chaos to a live broadcast? But this is a story that I imagine is going to get a lot of traction. Like here it is on the day of the NBCU upfronts. Like here is a show that is getting $265 million a year, and just hours before your broadcast, your main event, two of your principal performers are walking out. Like extrapolate this to any other kind of live broadcast. I mean, it is, it sounds like chaos. Like, could you imagine this happening? And I think and you're talking about two very prominent figures in Sasha Banks and Naomi.
Yeah. There are certain people in the chat room bring up their mental health. And of course, like this, maybe contrasting to previous times where these instances may have happened, I think the public awareness of that topic is much greater now than it was before. So absolutely, it is a topic of discussion. not something I could necessarily personally speak to without knowing the actual circumstances. But I mean, all that said, it is just really kind of curious to see the WWE's reaction to it, to see the public's reaction to it, because I'm sure this will.
That was a statement fueled by emotion. That was an absolutely knee-jerk statement that I think would be one that it's like you send out a tweet and and then you come back and check Twitter, like, why did I send that out?
Well, and you're a company doing this. So, I mean, like, how are these bridges going to be repaired after publicly throwing some of those lines out there like that, specifically mentioning 2 performers in that ring. And I feel like if we know the experience levels of some of the people that are in there, I have to think that I can't actually imagine who it would be, because everybody's experienced in there. So now everybody's like, the point is, it's going to be left up to speculation now to think about who the 2 performers.
That was reckless. That was reckless on their part to just throw it out there. Like, 2 of these other 4 are considered dangerous. Totally right.
2, like, they're all veterans here. We're talking about Doudrop and Nikki Cross and Becky Lynch and Asuka. So anyway, who knows if that is even the actual reason why that happened. But to me, it's incredibly telling how public and how much I actually think information was put into this press release.
Yeah. Also worth noting that Jimmy Uso was there on the show. He was booked to be in a match, and he stayed. So he was there. Mm-hmm. That's like an interesting dynamic to all of this as well, that both husband and wife were on this show. And yeah, beyond that, I would actually be very surprised if Sasha and Naomi do not comment on this in some way this week. I almost feel they have to, given the way that WWE has couched this and positioned this, and I'm sure we'll want to get their side out, and whatever form that is. I hope if they're comfortable, they take that opportunity.
Yeah. It's these moments, in professional wrestling that I think really show off how unique of a medium it is. A show where on the night of, performers and characters can just be, removed from the screen for whatever reason, and storylines have to change to like. I again wish everybody like is healthy and okay with it all, and I love the 2 talents that are involved, and I hope they end up like patching things up and continuing their careers. But I have to say, like, as a wrestling fan, like, these are some of the moments of the sport where I'm the most energized, because we all want to know what exactly is going on. So, the bigger story is like, how is WWE going to parlay this, if they are going to in fact work with Sasha and Naomi again, into something, because we know that they will.
I mean, history always dictates that eventually the sides come back together. And unless this is just such an untenable infraction that the WWE views that they do not want to repair that bridge. It is obviously there's obviously damage in the immediate aftermath of this decision. And listen, if you are a company that is producing television, and all of a sudden, like hours before a broadcast, 2 of your performers leave, like, that is going to generate an emotional response. I know that there is going to be, I think, a lot of sympathy for Sasha Banks and Naomi, but I think there's also going to be a lot that are going to say that, listen, if there were giant issues, like, there is, again, we don't know what all the specifics were. They were obviously at enough of an impasse that Sasha Banks and Naomi felt there was not a resolution to their situation, and they opted to use what leverage they did have, and that was physically leaving the building. Like, in all these years, whenever people talk about the idea of what would it take for the WWE to really strong arm and get a union, the answer is always the day of WrestleMania. Your main eventers get together and state, we will not go out unless there is something given to us. And that would be the ultimate. I mean, there is just, and that's a completely fantasy situation, but that is what we were talking with in terms of the disparity in power that the company possesses over its talent that very, very rarely gets to exude anything. And this was a very public showcase of one, and forced a show to be reshuffled.
It is Though I would contend that, I mean, this is not necessarily what seems to be a matter of financial or even like I don't know, contractual sort of maybe disparities or injustice. It seems like it's more creatively based, and as a result, I mean, I'm just really curious internally, like what the talents might also think of this, because ultimately it resulted in a lot more work for the people that were involved in Becky Lynch and Asuka, and of course, Doudrop and Nikki Cross not getting matches. Like, how do talents view something like this? And what is sort of the communication backstage about how they're supposed to feel about something like this, even if somebody publicly might support Naomi and Becky and Sasha Banks. I mean, probably unlikely to speak up about it, but I'm just very curious. Maybe non-WWE talents, what they think about it as well.
Yeah, I would guess that just about every talent has probably had that moment of extreme frustration at times. And you're probably also going to get like a very vocal contingent that will look at this as you never miss the show. You never walk out, and will have a very pro company stance. And it will be interesting to see what the divide is among talent, privately and publicly. I think there may be a disparity there as well. So yeah, this was obviously the prevailing story on Monday night, and we'll continue to discuss. We will get your feedback at the end of the show, and this will work its way through the review on top of that. But before we start off the Raw review, we did want to go over a couple of things coming up on the site this week, beginning with Tuesday night's edition of Rewind Away, where Way and I are going back to 1997 to chat about Shawn Michaels, someone who certainly had his contentious issues with the WWF over the years. And this was the night of the vacating of the WWF Championship and delivering the promo that was dubbed that he had lost his smile. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this segment, how it was viewed at the time in 1997. I pulled out some excerpts from some different accounts over the years, including Shawn Michaels writing about this in his book. And we will look back at this. And also how this would be viewed today. I think it would be very different than it was in 1997, but Shawn Michaels was an extremely polarizing figure by this point in 1997, and there were a lot of dynamics at play. So this is a special Thursday edition of Raw, going head to head with Seinfeld.
Oh, okay. Wow. That Seinfeld was a juggernaut in
Dude,
those
this
days,
NBC lineup on Thursday nights was just,
wow,
my God.
Incredible.
They were stacked. Friends, Seinfeld, ER, they weren't messing around at NBC on Thursday nights.
I tell you, you're forgetting Frasier. You kidding me?
I don't know if Frasier was on at least not on this night.
No, okay. All right then. All right. Well, I look forward to it tomorrow on the Post Wrestling Cafe. Cool.
So you can check that out. And then later on this week, of course, Rewind to Dynamite on Wednesday night. Thursday, Way is going to Jordan Goodman for the wellness policy. And this month's topic, comedy.
Yes. We'll just be telling jokes the whole hour and a half. Yeah. No, we'll be talking about comedy, and I think, a bit more about like how it plays a role perhaps in our everyday lives, why it's important to maybe look at things on with a comedic lens from time to time, and maybe the culture of comedy, and maybe how divided and contentious it can be in certain times, like we've seen publicly with like the Will Smith Chris Rock incident and the Dave Chappelle incident. So it'll be a really interesting topic I'm looking forward to.
And as well, rounding out the week, we'll have Rewind to SmackDown available for Post Wrestling Cafe members. I guess 10 o'clock again Eastern this Friday night, because Rampage will be the early edition of Rampage once again, followed by SmackDown. We'll have a special edition of the NWA podcast. They are back this weekend. Nate, Chris, and Andrew, a new Postmarks edition featuring Karen Peterson as the guest, WrestleNomics, and for Post Daily News, we have a lot of news to discuss on Tuesday, and we'll also be joined by Mark Polisel, who is the promoter of C4 Wrestling out of Ottawa, Ontario. They just ran a show on Friday, and we're going to have Mark on to discuss some of the success they have had since coming back after the pandemic, and what it's like navigating kind of a post-pandemic independent wrestling company, and a lot of the measures that they have put in place, what the appetite has been for wrestling fans coming back. I think it'll be a very interesting chat with Mark, in addition to all of the news that will be happening on Tuesday. So that's live at 1 Eastern. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. give us a thumbs up as we are on the race to our next milestone.
Yeah. Thumbs up, leave a comment, join the discussion, share the shows if you like them.